Breitbart.com has reported that in the city of Trollhättan, several Swedish police were attacked by a large gang of youths over the weekend. On Sunday evening, a group of around 20 to 30 young men rioted and caused havoc in the Kronogarden district of Trollhättan. Police say the youths were armed with rocks and fireworks, which they used to smash up a bus shelter. When police arrived on the scene, the gang attacked them with rocks that were so large they disabled their police car. Police struggled to get the situation under control, with the riot continuing for 3 hours until after 10 p.m. So far, none of the youths involved in the incident has been caught or arrested, and no one has been reported as being injured.
The rusty-patched bumblebee has become the first officially endangered bee species in the continental U.S. This comes after objections from some business interests and a last-minute delay ordered by the Trump administration. One of many bee types that have suffered steep population declines, the rusty-patched has disappeared from about 90% of its range in the past 20 years. It previously was common across the East Coast and much of the Midwest, where it played a crucial role as a pollinator of crops and wild plants. Its listing as an endangered species means the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will devise a plan for returning the imperiled bee to a healthy and secure condition. Advocates said that they hoped the recovery plan would also help other struggling pollinators, including bees and the monarch butterfly.
Strong winds, quarter-sized hail, and lightning ripped through towns in northern Georgia Wednesday. According to Reuters, the storms reportedly killed one man and left several cities with severe damage and power outages. As the storm slowly crossed the state on Tuesday afternoon, gusts of wind of about 60 miles per hour toppled trees and power lines. Several school systems in the north of the state said they would begin classes 2 hours late on Wednesday. More than 170,000 residents in North Georgia and the Atlanta metro area lost power at the height of the storm.
Reuters reports Governor Chris Christie said on Tuesday that New Jersey will give up to $1 million in grants to religious institutions and other nonprofit groups vulnerable to attacks in the wake of a spate of threats against Jewish organizations around the country. Organizations in 9 New Jersey counties will be able to apply to the state's Office of Homeland Security for grants of up to $50,000 each for security equipment if they can show they are at high risk of terrorist attack, Christie said in his announcement. Christie, a Republican, cited a bomb threat against a Jewish community center in Cherry Hill, Camden County last month, one of more than 100 such incidents tallied at Jewish community centers around the United States this year.
On Tuesday, the North Korean Foreign Ministry claimed the country was not frightened by U.S. warnings of preemptive military action, describing its expanding nuclear program as a treasured sword of justice. In response to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's comment on Friday that an elevated weapons threat from North Korea would be met with an appropriate response, a spokesman for the rogue regime said, "The world will soon witness what eventful significance the recent ground jet test of Korean-style high-thrust engine will carry. The nuclear force of North Korea is the treasured sword of justice and the most reliable war deterrence." Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, claimed that North Korea was the #1 threat to the U.S. and that military action remains an option if the regime fails to show cooperation.
Bridget Gabriel, the founder of Act for America, a sadly influential anti-Muslim movement that promotes thoughts such as every practicing Muslim is a radical Muslim, is reportedly readying herself for a meeting at the White House. Though White House officials report they have no knowledge of the meeting, Gabriel's Twitter account says otherwise, with a posted photo last night captioned, "In D.C. preparing for my meeting at the White House." This all comes to light as Donald Trump's administration continues in their plight to keep those of Islamic faith out of their precious United States of America.
According to Iraqi officers on Tuesday, Iraqi government forces attempted to evacuate civilians from Mosul's Islamic State-held Old City. However, militant snipers hampered the effort. In recent days, thousands have escaped. However, as many as 600,000 civilians remain in the western area of Mosul, complicating a battle being fought with artillery and airstrikes in addition to ground combat. While no precise toll of civilian casualties has been given, a prominent Iraqi politician said last week that the number could be as high as 3,500 dead since the attack on western Mosul began in mid-February. An emergency field hospital set up by the U.S. medical charity Samaritan's Purse claims it has treated over 1,000 patients, many of them women and children, suffering wounds from gunfire, landmines, mortar rounds, car bombs, and booby traps since January.
A survey found that more than 1 in 3 U.S. Muslims fear they could be targeted by white supremacist groups following President Donald Trump's election. 42% say their children have been bullied in school because of their faith. Cracking down on what Trump has called radical Islamic terrorists and restricting travel from certain Middle Eastern countries have been major elements of his presidency. According to the study released by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, the fear of being targeted contributes to a lower than average rate of voting by adult Muslim citizens.
Researchers are looking at whether climate change may be linked to type 2 diabetes. Rising global temperatures have raised concerns about the impact on public health, largely because climate change is associated with infectious diseases and food shortages. According to a study in the journal BMJ Open Diabetes Research and Care, with the rise of outdoor temperatures, the prevalence of diabetes in the United States also increased. Researchers maintain, however, that association studies do not actually imply causation.
Billionaire businessman David Rockefeller has died. He was 101 years old when he passed away March 20th. Rockefeller became CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank in 1969. He pioneered economic relations with other countries, with Chase Manhattan becoming the first bank to open offices in China and the Soviet Union. Rockefeller was the grandson of Standard Oil co-founder John D. Rockefeller, who was America's first billionaire. Although David Rockefeller lived a lavish lifestyle, he used his enormous wealth to help others as well. In a statement, former President George H.W. Bush said Rockefeller was, quote, one of the most generous philanthropists and brightest points of light, whose caring and commitment to the widest range of worthy causes touched and lifted innumerable lives. The New York Times says he helped develop thousands of apartments for lower-income families in the city. Reuters reports he gave away nearly $2 billion during his lifetime. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
Scheduling screenings for colon cancer are said to offer individuals a 90% chance of survival based on early detection. But the idea of having the colonoscopy itself can oftentimes be daunting for people. For those looking to avoid some of the common side effects associated with having the screening, such as adverse reaction to the sedation, bleeding from the biopsy site, or even a perforation of the colon or rectum, there is good news. The Loyola University Health System is looking to begin offering PillCam Colon 2, a capsule that contains 2 mini cameras on either end. Patients would swallow the capsule, which would travel through the digestive tract, capturing images and transmitting them wirelessly to a recorder, where the data would be recorded. When the procedure is completed, patients would relieve themselves and be on their way. The FDA has approved the procedure for specific candidates, including those who have a history of difficulty with the traditional screening methods.
Due to one of the 3 ingredients needed in a lethal injection execution soon to expire, the state of Arkansas is looking to put 8 men to death in April over a 10-day period. If carried out, Arkansas would be the first state to execute that many inmates in such a short time period since 1976, when the death penalty was reinstated by the U.S. Supreme Court. The cause of the rush is the shortage of the sedative midazolam, which is used to put an inmate to sleep before receiving the lethal chemicals. The supply of the drug reportedly expires in Arkansas at the end of April.
Beijing's environmental police are cracking down on polluters in the city. The anti-smog task force arrested and detained a man March 13th for discharging excess emissions. This was the first time the environmental watchdog has put someone behind bars since its inception in January. State media reports the man worked for a heating supply company, which was found to have emitted 10 times the amount of sulfur dioxide than the legal limit. After confessing to violating regulations, he was detained and forced to pay a fine. Details about the length of the detainment remain unclear, but China's administrative detention can extend up to 15 days. The environmental police were created to stamp out street-level sources of pollution, including trash burning and open-air barbecues. The group has remained largely symbolic until now. The Chinese government declared a, quote, war on pollution in 2014. However, the country continues to suffer from hazardous smog. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
A year after bombers linked to the terrorist group ISIS killed 32 people in Brussels, Belgian authorities say that much remains unclear, even if those who staged them are either dead or in jail. Since the bombings, the country has remained on high alert, with one senior official saying, "We will only have certainty when the situation in Syria and Iraq is resolved." According to a study, those two countries have attacked over 400 Belgians to join the ranks of Islamist militants. As the Belgian capital prepares to mark the anniversary of the bombings this Wednesday, authorities say they still don't have clear answers to who specifically in ISIS organized and ordered the attacks.
NBC News reports that a busy public restroom in China has begun deploying high-tech facial recognition technology to wipe out the problem of toilet paper theft. At Temple of Heaven, a popular tourist attraction in Beijing, users must stand for 3 seconds in front of a camera-equipped dispenser in order to receive a 2-foot section of bathroom tissue. The $1,000 machine will not dispense anymore to the same user for the next 9 minutes. A park manager told NBC News that the unusual restriction aims to cope with the behavior of taking toilet paper home, which is theft and abuse of a public resource.
On Tuesday, authorities in South Dakota confirmed an incident of vandalism against the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline in which someone burned a hole through an empty section of pipe. Texas-based pipeline developer Energy Transfer Partners said in court documents Monday that there have been recent coordinated physical attacks along the pipeline that pose threats to life, physical safety, and the environment. The company didn't provide further details, including the locations of the attacks, and on Tuesday, EPT spokeswoman Vicky Granado declined to comment.
Hundreds of relatives of individuals killed in the September 11, 2001 attacks are suing Saudi Arabia in U.S. court, looking to take advantage of a law passed by Congress last year that allows victims of such attacks on U.S. soil to sue state sponsors. Monday, a lawsuit was filed in federal court in its latest effort to hold Saudi Arabia liable for the al-Qaeda attacks, which killed nearly 3,000 people in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. The lawsuit, which seeks unspecified damages, was brought by families and individuals of the victims who suffered injuries after responding to the site of attacks in New York.
A baby girl from the Ivory Coast, born with 4 legs and 2 spines, has been successfully separated from a parasitic twin in a rare and complex surgery at a Chicago hospital. 10-month-old Dominique underwent a 6-hour procedure involving 5 surgeons at the Advocate Children's Hospital in Park Ridge, Illinois. Dominique was born with a parasitic twin. The bottom half of her not fully developed twin's body protruded from her neck and back. This parasitic twin is an identical twin that fails to fully separate in development, meaning the twin was dependent on her heart and lungs to provide nourishment. The surgery was a success, and Dominique is now healthy and thriving with the Chicago foster family, who will look after her until she is well enough to return home.
Website hacks are on the rise, and the trend is set to continue. That's according to Google, which said the number of websites hacked jumped 32% last year. In a post on its Webmaster blog Monday, March 20th, the company said, quote, "As hackers get more aggressive and more sites become outdated, hackers will continue to capitalize by infecting more sites." The warning comes amid an influx in cybersecurity breaches. Last month, the web server for the Association of British Travel Agents was hacked, potentially affecting 43,000 people. Concerns over cyber attacks during upcoming elections recently prompted Google and sister company Jigsaw to launch the Protect Your Election Toolkit on Tuesday. According to a blog post signed by staffers from Google France and Jigsaw, the package can protect election organizers and monitors from getting hacked and is being offered free of charge. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
Organizers said on Tuesday the United States pulled out of a regional hearing held to discuss the possible effects on human rights from executive orders signed by U.S. President Donald Trump targeting immigrants and refugees. The hearing by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights was created by the 35-nation Organization of American States to protect human rights in the Americas. It follows concerns over the impact of 3 executive orders signed by Trump, including plans to build a wall on the border with Mexico. The U.S. government has appealed a federal judge halt on Trump's ban on refugees and travelers from 6 predominantly Muslim countries. Trump said the ban was needed to protect the country from Islamic militants. Immigration advocates have said it discriminates against Muslims.
Public lashings in accordance with Islamic Sharia law have been photographed in Indonesia. Several citizens were publicly lashed in the province of Aceh on March 20th. The photos were taken by the European Press Photo Agency. Sharia law is a justice system derived from a strict interpretation of Islam. Gay or extramarital sex, alcohol consumption, gambling, and other violations of this interpretation of Islam are punishable by public whippings. The masked man in the black robe has a title that translates in English to, quote, the executioner. Metro UK says the executioner used a cane to whip one man 8 times for gambling. A man and woman, both accused of having extramarital sex, were lashed 25 times. Another woman was whipped for spending time in close proximity with a man who was not her husband. A man accused of being a child molester was lashed 120 times. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Neela Uni.
On Tuesday, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti issued an executive order barring city employees from helping immigration authorities. The executive order also prohibits employees from granting any immigration agent access to a city facility unless legally required to do so. In his order, Garcetti wrote, "All residents of Los Angeles must feel safe and supported when accessing the vast array of city facilities, programs, and services available to them." The order is seen as the latest move by a major U.S. metropolitan area against a crackdown on illegal immigration by Donald Trump's presidential administration. Andrew King reported being horrified when he went outside and discovered 2 swastikas spray-painted across the front of his home in upstate New York. Police are now saying he did it himself. King called police February 10th, alleging that someone had spray-painted the swastikas on his home overnight. He called the vandalism heartbreaking and painful. However, police said an investigation revealed King was the actual vandal. King was charged with reporting a fake crime. He pleaded not guilty Tuesday before he was sent to jail on $500 bail.
CBS News reports that a new ban on most electronics and carry-ons on flights from 8 mostly Middle Eastern and North American countries tracks back to a laptop bombing last year, a U.S. official says. Since the laptop bombing of an airliner out of Mogadishu in February 2016, there has been an accumulation of intelligence that convinced analysts that Al-Qaeda has developed the capability to hide explosives in batteries of the size used in laptops and tablets. Prosecutors report that it was the incompetence of former Penn State President Graham Spanier that allowed Jerry Sandusky's evil to run wild. Spanier, who is accused of negligence after reports were filed in his office in 2001 that alleged football coach Jerry Sandusky had taken advantage of a boy in a Penn State team shower. Though Spanier's defense accused prosecutors of attempting to criminalize a judgment call, it is noted that after the 2001 report was filed, Spanier and other university officials had decided to plead with Sandusky to seek treatment for himself rather than report him to authorities.
Philadelphia's popular Cinco de Mayo celebration has been canceled due to concerns that attendees will be targeted by immigration enforcement. The annual Carnaval de Puebla has drawn 15,000 attendees in past years, about half of them coming from outside Philadelphia, according to CNN. But organizers decided to cancel the event, saying they didn't want to cause difficulties for anyone. Meanwhile, one of the event's founders told Al Dia News the cancellation was also meant to, quote, raise a voice of protest against the White House's immigration policies. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement spokesman has responded, saying ICE's actions are lead-driven and they do not conduct indiscriminate sweeps. Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney said, quote, "I want our immigrant community to know that we want them here. We will do whatever we can to help them feel comfortable bringing this celebration back in the future." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
President Rodrigo Duterte said same-sex marriage can't be legalized in the Philippines. Duterte spoke on the topic while visiting the Filipino community in Myanmar on March 19th. The president explained same-sex marriage may be legal in the United States and some European countries, but, quote, "that can't be applied to us. We're Catholics." He added the civil code only allows a man to marry a woman and vice versa. But Duterte clarified that he is not against members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community. In 2012, during Duterte's time as mayor of Davao, the city passed an anti-discrimination law protecting LGBT and minority groups. The president's recent comments contradict what he told a local television interview during his presidential campaign. In the show that aired in July 2015, Duterte expressed openness to legalizing same-sex unions, saying, quote, "everyone deserves to be guaranteed happy." For Newsbeat Social, I'm Kimberly Caldwell.
Almost half of Canadians reportedly want to deport people caught illegally entering the country from the United States. A Reuters Ipsos poll released March 20th finds that 48% of respondents want to send illegal border crossers back to the U.S. Meanwhile, only 36% of Canadians think the border crossers should stay. Canada has a reputation for being welcoming, but its residents appear nearly as divided as the United States when it comes to illegal entry. A similar Reuters Ipsos poll conducted last fall in the U.S. found that exactly 50% of Americans favored, quote, increasing the deportation of illegal immigrants. U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to strictly enforce immigration laws, and the administration's preliminary budget reportedly reserves $1.5 billion to help build a border wall along the Mexico border. The Associated Press reports there's been a surge in asylum seekers being intercepted at the Canadian border since Trump was inaugurated. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Matt Paul.
A Russian lawyer who was a witness in a U.S. federal court case connected to the largest money laundering scheme in Russian history was mysteriously hospitalized in critical condition after plunging 4 stories on Tuesday in Moscow. There are conflicting reports about what happened to the lawyer Nikolai Gorakov. His spokesman, who was an alleged victim in the money laundering scheme, says he was thrown from the 4th floor of his apartment building. Russian media, often controlled by the state, says he fell while he and workers were trying to lift a jacuzzi into his apartment. The case, USA versus Prevazon, is on the brink of going to trial in Manhattan, right in the middle of a massive shakeup of federal prosecutors by President Trump.
Scotland's lawmakers are set to demand a second independence referendum Wednesday, according to CNN, as British Prime Minister Theresa May prepares to trigger Article 50 and leave the EU. Scotland's leaders are locked in a battle over their country's future. While Scotland's parliament is expected to be in favor of a second independence referendum, only the UK Parliament in London has the power to sanction one. On Tuesday, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon warned that it would be, quote, wrong, unfair, and utterly unsustainable for Westminster to reject the outcome of Wednesday's vote.
The Saharan Desert is one of the most arid places on Earth, and a new study says humans are to blame. Scientists say the vast desert was once green and teeming with life, but thousands of years ago, rain stopped falling and the region in northern Africa shriveled up, becoming what it is today, the largest hot desert in the world. Scientists already knew this part of the Sahara's history, but they've struggled to explain it. Archaeologist David Wright of Seoul National University suggests in the journal Frontiers in Earth Science that humans came to the Sahara around 8,000 years ago and started farming. Within about 1,000 years, the area changed so much that people packed up and moved on. Livestock may have consumed much of the area's vegetation, possibly causing a shift in the atmosphere from wet and fertile to dry and arid. Wright said the findings shed light on the Earth's future. For Newsbeat Social, I'm Kimberly Caldwell.